Hey guys, Twice here with our second Buddy Fight deck profile. This one is yet another one from Cross. I'm working on Dragon Knights right now, and it's going to take me a little while because the shop didn't have a lot of the stuff that I needed, and I'm still trying to find a build that I really prefer. But this is going to be his Katana World deck, specifically ninjas, or sorry, Katana World as they call it in the anime. I don't even understand anymore. Anyway, so we're here with the IS crew, and we're kind of just hanging out. So we're going to start off. Of course, we have our flag. And we run Hokey Sleeves on an IS map because that's just how Cross rolls. Katana World, really interesting world, gotten some cool support, Skull Warriors, and then just two very interesting clans. But we're going to start with the monsters. So first off, we have our buddy monster, which is Tsukikage. Now, I know two of these cards are proxied, but that's because it's taken Cross forever to find two more, at least trade somebody for them. But look at that, ladies and gentlemen, that is an SP Tsukikage. Look at how beautiful that card is. Cross has made it a thing now to where he's going to get an SP of every one of his buddies because he got that SP Armonite Cerberus. But Tsukikage, just the main card for the deck. Ability is that if he would be destroyed, you can discard a Ninja Arts card, or sorry, a non-monster card actually, and he's not destroyed. He's got 5k, 2 crit. The 1 defense is mitigated by the fact that he has that ability of just not being destroyed. Great card to put in the center. Yeah, just this is like the center of the deck. Like, he really is just a great buddy monster to have. And that's why Zanya chose him. Or rather, he chose Zanya. I think that's how it's supposed to work. Anyway, next we have 3 Shiden. Great card. So, ability Cyber Analysis. You pay a gauge, then you discard a Ninja Arts card, and then you draw 2 cards. So you might be paying a gauge, but thanks to a card called Clear Serenity, it's not hard for this deck to get a lot of gauge. And they don't really use a lot. Mostly it's like 2 gauge at the most, I think, is the most that this deck uses. But yeah, Shiden, also a great target for your opponent to kind of just like draw their attacks away from your center and towards him. Because you really, if you use the ability twice, you do kind of get the full benefit out of it. And of course, he can work in great combo with Tsukikage for utility and just giving that extra damage. Alright, next up, we have, how do you pronounce his name? This is Stealth Ninja Kirikakure Sazo? I think that's how you pronounce that. Just a crit card. It's a size 1 with 2 crit, and, the power and the defense, not really all that great. But for cards that have low defense, especially decks that run mostly size 1 monsters, he can be useful in just kind of pushing through those cards, but really you want this card for the extra 2 crit. And he's a size 1, so you can run him, Shiden, Tsukikage, just all kinds of different combos on your left, right, and your center. Alright, next up, we have 2 Hayate. Good card, just he moves. If you want to block attacks, if for whatever reason Tsukikage is destroyed, you have this on the field. Well, there you go. You can still cover your center. And that's kind of what the deck is good at doing, is just making sure that the center is covered. You got enough counters, you got enough, abilities to kind of work, or traps that you set to just make sure that your center is always protected. So that's what I like about this deck personally, is that it's just really good at defense, and it offers some pretty good offense too. Plus, he's got 2 crits, so Hayate, just an overall really useful card for the deck. Then, of course, you can't really run this deck effectively, or at least its impact strategy, without running Kashin Koji. Kashin Koji's call cost is pay 1 gauge, but he has Clairvoyance. Yeah, that's what that's called. When he's called, you can look at your opponent's hand, which is great because if you know what kind of cards are in your opponent's hand, then you can set up your impact cards correctly, or just kind of predict their strategy. Any card in any card game that lets you see your opponent's hand is good, because then you can predict your opponent's next move. And he's a size 2. He has only 1,000 power and 1,000 defense, but he still has 2 crit, which is good because he can still do some nice damage. And yeah, it really just helps you set up the main source of the strategy for the deck. So running 4 of them, definitely still really good. Then we run, hopefully I'm going to have trouble pronouncing these names, just as a fair warning if you haven't noticed by now. Mobile Ninja Jiraiya, I think is how you pronounce that. Just a good card. 3 crit, or rather, 5k defense, 5k attack, 2 crit, size 2 monster, just a power card. That's really what he's supposed to be. Can make for some nice, just considerable defense, because that's what this deck can lack sometimes. And yeah, it can help push through some key monsters too with that 5,000 power. And then we have 2 Slashing Ashura, the only size 3 that he runs. But Slashing Ashura, really great. What you do is you pay 1 life, and then you drop your entire hand, which technically, if you have no cards in hand, you could still drop it, technically. But then you destroy all of your opponent's monsters on the field. And you can only use that ability once per turn. Still got 3 crit and 6 attack, which is kind of weak for a size 3. But, 3 crit, 6 power, that's still really good. And really, it's just kind of if your opponent has like a full field of size 1s that you really just need to get rid of because they're kind of annoying. Like if you're facing, I don't know, a Katana World deck, then he is a really good utility for that. So that's the monsters. Moving on to the spells now. Run 3 Clear Serenity. Really useful card for this deck. It's a counter, weirdly enough, but it's not hard because you can counter like anything your opponent does. If your opponent draws, counter. If your opponent breathes, just say counter your breathe. It's like, okay. So then it basically just puts 3 cards from the top of your deck into your gauge. Sets up your impacts mostly. That's what I find myself using this card a lot for, is just making sure that I have the gauge necessary to use the impact cards. And, just if you have gauge, then you can use Shiden and Kashin Koji a little bit more. That way you just consistently are able to draw cards, gain an advantage over your opponent. That's what Clear Serenity is really just designed to do. Then, run 3 Steel Balls, because counterattack, just always helpful. It's a counter deck, that's what the ninjas are supposed to be. Make sure, again, that your center's covered. If you have, like, that Slashing Ashura there, then it makes him a little bit better because he can kind of get that extra power and defense that he may need to kind of compete with some lower size monsters that might be looking to push through him. So yeah, just an overall really useful card. Most decks can make pretty good use of these. Counterattack plus 3 power and defense. And then, of course, we run 3 body replacements because countering any attack is always good. If it's not a link attack, if it is a link attack, then it's kind of annoying, but most of the time this card will be extremely useful, especially again in covering the center. And then, in combo with those, 2 right hands. What is that? Shooting Cross Knives right hand. I think there's also a left hand version of it too. So, ability is cast cost, you pay 1 gauge, and if your card in the right is attacked, then you can nullify the attack and you destroy all of your opponent's monsters on the field. What's really cool is you can kind of like set a trap for your opponent with this card. Like if you put Shiden down, which of course they want to get rid of that card because he's giving you a consistent advantage in drawing 2 cards every turn with the cost of just a gauge and dropping a Ninja Arts. So this card kind of acts as like a nice, like you can use other cards as bait for this one to kind of just clear your opponent's field. And yeah, definitely has come in handy against me when I've faced Cross with this deck. He particularly likes to use this card. But yeah, again, just a really good counter. You can use a lot of stuff for bait. And then we run 2 Demon Way. I'm not even going to try. Cast cost, pay 1 gauge. And you can only use it when your opponent's monster attacks a monster in your center. You counter the attack, and you nullify it. And if the attacking monster is size 2 or less, you destroy it. So it is going to be a really useful card most of the time. It will still nullify the attack, even if it's like a size 3, so that's not really a problem. And thankfully, for decks like if you're facing Magic World or something that runs lower size monsters, you will be able to use this card very consistently. And thankfully, its cast cost is only pay 1 gauge, so there you go. You are going to save most of your gauge for your impacts. So these low cost, effective spells are kind of what make the deck, very viable. And then the last 2 spells we run are Hades Fall. Just another good trap card, I guess. If this game were to ever have trap cards, this would be a great example of one. Cast cost, you pay 1 gauge, and you choose a card from your deck, put it into this card's soul, and when your opponent calls a monster, if that monster has the same size as the one you put into the soul, you destroy the monster and then deal damage to your opponent. I think it's and deal 2 damage to your opponent. That's it. And yeah, that's good. Just a good trap card, basically. Just helps set up. It combos really well with the impact cards as well. And then for item cards, again, because you're going to want to have something in the center most of the time, he only runs 4 items. Just if you have the center open and you really don't want to put anything in front of it, this is 2 crit, 3 power, very standard. And yeah, just some people don't expect item cards with Katana World usually, and it puts a little pressure off of you to always keep something in the center. You know, if you have the option of putting down an item, you do have one. So these cards can definitely have their merit. And then, finally, onto the impacts. The center of this deck strategy is in its impacts. So, let me explain the way that this is set up. So, first of all, you have your 4 lethal formation, Secret Sword lethal formation. Cast cost, you choose another of your Secret Swords from the deck or the drop zone, you put it into this card's soul. And then, whenever that specific card's criteria is met, whenever that certain kind of card that impact is geared towards is used, then you activate it from this card's soul and you deal 3 damage to your opponent. So that's kind of how this is supposed to set up. You can, I believe, have 2 or more of these set up, so you can have like the one for spells, the one for items, so that you know that you're going to counter whatever move your opponent makes. And again, he sets up pretty well with Hades Fall too, because not only is your opponent really concerned about calling a new card because they might take 2 damage, they're also concerned about using like their spells or anything because they might take 3. And the 3 cards that do the work for the impacts are Star Crusher, which is used for spells. When your opponent activates a spell, you counter it, they take 3 damage. Moonfang for impacts, which can be pretty useful for cards. It can't, obviously, it can't nullify, like Gargantuan Punisher. But it's good against, like, Ancient World if your opponent uses Steel Dragon Barrage, because they play with their life points a lot. Their life points may be low as it is, so that can kind of put a lot of pressure on Ancient World. And then Shooting Star for item cards. So that is kind of the overall deck build. It's very interesting, Katana World, and just definitely a lot of traps and stuff that you can set. It plays well to the idea of that it is a ninja deck. So, traps, spells, counters, a lot of destroying the opponent's field, a lot of very interesting gameplay that goes on here, a lot of skill for this deck. So I hope you guys like it, and, let's give Cross a nice shout out for letting us use his awesome deck, and hopefully I'll have those Dragon Knights done sometime in the next 2 weeks, and I'll be able to get a deck profile up for you. But have a great day, and keep card fighting and buddy fighting, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.